Good morning, sunshine. So today we're going to talk about one of the two ways we can alter or change the flow of lighting. We talked about lamps being the source of light last time. Obviously, the sun is the source of light. Reflection is one way you can change the way the light rays are going. Lenses are another way that you can change the direction of the light ray. Today we're going to focus on reflection. Next class period we'll focus on refraction, which is bending the light rays through a lens. But again, I think it's just too much to handle all in one day. There are some rules we're going to talk about and other things. First of all, we need to talk about what a normal is. What it is to be normal. In theater, usually we have no idea what normal is. But in scientific terms, there is a definition for a thing called a normal. A normal is an imaginary line drawn perpendicular to a surface. That's the definition of normal. So it's important, because of the way the definitions are used, that you understand that's what they're talking about when they're talking about a normal. Okay? An imaginary line drawn perpendicular to any surface. Now, if you have a curved surface, it's perpendicular to the surface, or perpendicular to the tangent of the surface, if that makes any sense. A tangent is a line that crosses a circle only at one point. And so you would be perpendicular to the tangent in the situation where you're dealing with a curved line, which again, when we get to lenses, is going to be more important than what we're talking about today, which is reflecting things, mirrors. All right, let's talk about the rule of reflection. Yes, the law of reflection states that the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. Now, what does that mean? That means that you have a source that has sent out a light ray, and when it strikes an object, the angle at which the light ray comes in and strikes the object at the normal is the angle it will be reflected off. Yes, that's the strict law. Now, in a mirror, that's all there is. A mirror is what's called specular reflection, where you just have a light ray come in, strike the surface at the normal, and then reflect exactly the way it struck the surface. It reflects exactly that way in a specular reflection. So that's the first type of reflection, is mirror reflection. Yes. Again, there's a nice little diagram of it there. You see the light ray coming in, it strikes the mirror, and it bounces off in the exact same angle it came. Yes. Now, the mirror can slightly, if the mirror is curved, if you've ever been to a fun house and you curve the mirror can distort the image. And that's what I'm going to call spread. If like the edge of the chair you're probably sitting in, the edge of the chairs that are right here, when you take the curvature and bend it like a brass ring or anything that's very reflective, but it's been distorted, that's what I'm going to call spread. The second type of reflection is what's called spread reflection, where you can still make out the source of the light. You can sort of make out, as a matter of fact, I'm going to say that if you look at that very carefully, that's spread, right? It's not exactly what's there, but you can sort of see, if you look very carefully at the camera, maybe Cody, maybe Katie in there, you can definitely see the light that is the reflection from the tube lights that are above us. But that's spread reflection. So again, still somewhat a mirror reflection, specular reflection, but the rays have been altered slightly. The next step is what's called diffused. My shirt is diffused. 90% of what you see is diffused reflection. It is an object that has taken the light rays, and because of the angles and what's involved, it has spread the light rays all about, and there's no way to make out in my shirt or in the chalkboard. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. But there's no way to make out where the light source is and that sort of thing. All right, that's diffused reflection. Now, the reason I'm going to talk about this later is because I'm going to call this mixed. This is diffused, but it also has a little bit of specular in there. You can maybe just make out the light from the fluorescent tubes above. That's what I'm going to call mixed. It's mostly one, but it's also got some of the other. If you had a mirror that had a smudge on it, you would have specular and spread. Yes, my glasses, when I can't see because I've got a fingerprint or food from lunch that I've dropped on them. They both, will transluce, but then they will also impede vision. Yes, and so those are the four types of reflection. You have specular, which is mirror; spread, which is the funhouse mirror and sort of distorts the image; diffused, which is your clothes and 90% of what you're going to see; and then mixed, like the button on the shirt, which is not this shirt, but some buttons are very shiny. Just because it's here, again, I don't know if you can see it, but the drama, the way it's been printed on this book, it's got a reflective quality to it. Hopefully that shows up in the camera. If it doesn't, we'll edit. But that is a combination. That's mixed. Yes. So those are the four types of reflection. Again, in the drawing there, you see that there are three types of mixed reflection, but I just lumped them all into one. It is a combination of the two. Yes. Now, that is going to be the answer, by the way, to question number 1 on Project 3. In case you want to grab Project 3 real quick. All right. Now, in the theater, one of the reasons we use the law of reflection is that we harness the energy from the lamp that is going the wrong direction. Yes? We talked about the limelight initially. The limelight, they used to just literally put a mirror right behind it, and any light that was going that way was great, and any light that was coming this way, they just put a mirror here and sent it back that way. Yes? So a mirror can be a reflective device. When you're talking about telebeams, for instance, telebeams are a moving light that the instruments stay still, but they have a mirror out front, so you're projecting into the mirror, and then the mirror sends the light ray, the light beam, to Katie or to Cody or to the computer or wherever around as it turns around, but it's strictly a mirror. Yes, so occasionally we will use the mirror. Yes, more often than not, we use one of the other types of reflectors. A spherical reflector is a circle, sphere, three-dimensional sphere. One of the ways you make a circle is you have a focal point, and then you take a compass and you draw the circle, which is equidistant from that point. The center of the circle is the focal point in a circle and also in a sphere. Again, it's three-dimensional, but it's the same basic idea as a circle. So the thing about a spherical reflector, the light rays that are headed toward you, I don't care about. I want those light rays going that way towards the audience, towards the actors. But the light rays that are headed this way, I want to capture them by using a spherical reflector. The problem with a spherical reflector is that because it bounces directly off the sphere, it goes back through the focal point, and because this is the light source, it's also very hot. We talked about the heat of the light source before, the lamp. It increases the amount of heat that's on that instrument. And so while it is very useful in the sense that it has captured a lot of the light rays that are going the wrong direction, the problem is that it actually increases the amount of heat at the focal point, and it can be something that you have to combat, especially in larger wattage lamps. If you've got a 500 watt lamp, I'm not saying it's cool, but it's not nearly as hot as a 1,000 watt lamp. And so in lower wattage instruments, a spherical reflector is still very popular. It's definitely easier to make because it's a nice sphere. But one of the types of instruments that we have in order to solve that problem is what's called a parabolic parabolic reflector. Again, we talked about PARs before. But you can see a PAR is straight on one side, curved on the back side, and straight on the other side. And this takes it, again, the little diagram there showed you, like your headlights on a car. It takes the light rays and it sends them out in parallel beams. If you think about it in the opposite way, it's the way that a radar station will collect data. The radar information, or the telescope collects data. You take the sky and you take all the light rays that are coming in, you collect them, and you focus it back on one focal point. Yeah, so it works both coming and going. That's a parabolic reflector. Yes, and that is used to send the light rays out in a parallel beam. Now, the one that works most efficiently for the theater, however, is this little thing called an ellipsoidal reflector. Now, an ellipse is an oval in 3 dimensions. And the way you draw an oval, just like you draw a circle, you have a center focal point and you draw it all the way around. The way you draw an oval is you have two focal points. Imagine putting two nails and two screws and then a string around to your focal point going to your pencil or pen. And as you drag it around the focal points, it changes the distance between both focal points. And the nice thing about that is that then you can have a light source at one focal point, and then you can have things like shutters and gobos and other things that alter the shape of the light at the second focal point, and it also transfers the heat away from the focal point to the second focal point. So it makes it cooler where the source is, yes? Now, that's the way a ellipsoidal reflector works. The last reflector that we're going to talk about is a parasil reflector. A cylinder is a tube, yes? And the way a parasil reflector, they use parasil reflector in cyc lights, and lights that are going to light up a backdrop or a piece of scenery that's very large. And what you want is an even wash over the top and the bottom. And again, this is covering distances of 20, 30 feet. And so what you'll have is a cylinder on the top and a parabolic reflector at the bottom. So at the bottom, you've got the parallel rays coming out just like you have on a parabolic. And then the top, because it's a cylinder, will send the light rays to the bottom of the backdrop evenly. And so you'll have a nice even wash from top to bottom by using that parasil reflector. Yes? But again, the only place you're going to find a parasil reflector are in far cycs. And again, those are becoming less and less popular because LEDs are sort of taking over the industry. Yes? Now, those are the answers to questions 2, 3, and 4 on project 3. So if you need to take a moment and go back and copy those notes, there's a spherical diagram, there's an ellipsoidal diagram, and there's a parabolic diagram. So while you're here, make sure you've got the answers to those 2, 3 questions. Yes. Now, one of the things that they've done in order to improve the amount of collection, a parabolic reflector will catch about 80% of light that's coming my direction. Yes. What they've done to increase that even more is added these things called annular rings. So if you look inside this reflector, you should be able to see like a little honeycomb pattern. And what that does is, because the filament is an inch, cc8, 8/8, which is 1 inch, it's right here at the focal point. And what it does is those little crimps increase the amount of light that is energy that is collected and sent toward the second focal point. So again, because there's a distance, it's not a point, it's a width to the source that collects almost 90%. Now again, the problem is you got to have a way to get your lamp in, and so there's this hole in the back. So that's one of the reasons we don't get near 100. But this will collect upwards of 92% of the light rays that come in my direction are redirected in the right direction for our purposes in the theater. Yes. So that's the way we use the law of reflection. It is a way to harness the energy and the light rays that are being sent the wrong way without having to increase the amount of wattage in the lamps. We can increase the amount of light energy on stage by reflecting the light rays back onto the stage. Cool? Now, let's talk about this thing called calibration. One of the problems with any and all of these reflectors is that in order to optimize the amount of light that is sent the right directions, you have to make sure your lamp is at the focal point. And when you align the lamp to the focal point, that's calibrating an instrument. So if for some reason your hot spot, in other words, there's maybe an intense area and then less intense areas, that's a bad thing usually. You want there to be a nice even field of light coming out. And so you may need to recalibrate your instrument in order to get there to be a nice even flow from one side to the other of your instrument. And that's called calibration. And again, there are little screws on the back of the mounting plate for the source for the lamp that you can adjust to change the angle a little bit, the depth a little bit, and all that sort of thing. Yes? Now, let's talk about the inverse square law. The inverse square law states that for every foot traveled, the light intensity decreases at an inverse square to the distance traveled. Now, what in the world did I just say?
Yeah.
Light intensity decreases at an inverse square to the distance traveled. Now, that's the law. I'll say it one more time just so you can write it in your notes. Light intensity decreases at an inverse square. In other words, you take the 1 and put it on top, the numerator, the denominator is the distance traveled squared. So if you are a foot away, for instance, from a candle, that's the distance of a lumen, which is the candle power of 1 foot is 1 lumen. 1 over 1 squared is 1 lumen, yes? If you then take another foot, you now are 1 over 2 squared. So 2 feet away from the candle as opposed to being 1 foot away is 1 over 2 squared bright. In other words, it's a quarter as bright 2 feet away as it was 1 feet away. Yes? And another foot away, it is now 3 feet away. It is 1 over 3 feet away squared. So you now have 1/9 the candle energy or light energy that you had at 1 foot away. There's again a nice little diagram that helps us explain that hopefully. Now, again, that's why the wattages and light lamps for the theater are so high. Because if you think about one candle, and you can light one candle and see in a room, yes? The problem is on stage, let's say the lighting instrument is 25, 30 feet, let's just make 30 feet because it's a nice round number, 30 feet away from the actor on stage. The actor on stage is another 20 feet back to the audience member sitting in the house. So the light ray before, again, what you care about is what it looks like to the audience member, not what it looks like to the actor. Who cares what the actor sees? Now, in blackouts and scene changes, do we want the actor to see or not fall down? Yes. But so we care. But it doesn't matter to the actor. Most actors, as a matter of fact, have no idea that the light's on them. We talked about moths and butterflies before. But the audience will see the light energy at, again, you've gone 30 feet that way, it continues to go in reflection. So you've gone 30 feet that way, 20 feet this way. By the time you get to the audience members, that's 50 squared. That is 2,500 of the light energy that you initially saw from the 500 watt lamp. So if, let's just say, a 500 watt lamp had 1 lumen, well, 500 lumens, it's not, but 500 lumens just for argument's sake, and you get to the actor and back to the audience, you divide 500 by 2,500, yes, you get to 1/5 of the candle power. Yes, so you can see how quickly you're going to need extra candle power in order to light that actor to where an audience can see them. Now, does it help to add more lights? Yes. Yes, if we turn off one bank of lights, it would be darker. When I walked in this morning, Katie had one bank of lights off. She was being a nice, comfortable morning, resting, having her coffee.
Yes.
And I woke her up. I turned all the rest of the lights. Turning the rest of the lights on. Woke her up. And that is true. One of the things about light is it energizes the molecules in our bodies. And so if you are ever watching a show or having a show that has low light, you're also going to have a low energy crowd, which is why when you do comedies, it wants to be bright, because that enlivens the audience, because when you can see and when things are bright, you're happy, yes? Now, again, we'll talk about bars and alcohol too, but for the most part, it was a lighting class, not another kind of class, yes? So that's, again, an important reason to understand the reason you were having to make such high choices in light intensity is because of the inverse square law. The light decreases at an inverse square of the distance traveled. See how much easier that is to understand now that we talked about it for a good 10 minutes? Yes, suddenly you can probably say it from memory now. All right, now, there are several types of lights that only require a source and a reflector, and they work just fine. A scoop is a very powerful light. Usually it is a spherical reflector. Usually it will use we talked about a frosted lamp, because again, a scoop is trying to light a lot of area. You'll see them in television a lot, because all they do is just pump light. Yes, you'll see them as work lights a lot. They are big and brassy. I mean, a scoop is going to be about 14, 16 inches around. You know, it's got a spherical reflector. Here's picture one. You can put a gel filter in front of it to change the color of it, but for the most part, that thing is just about pumping light. It is a source, a big old light bulb. It is a spherical reflector, and it pumps it that direction. That's a scoop. You also have these things called beam projectors. If you've ever seen like a spotlight outdoors, that is a parabolic reflector, and a cone that actually blocks the light that's coming out of the lamp because it adds a hot spot to the source. So a beam projector is a very strong spotlight, and because it doesn't have to have a lens, it works very well outdoors because you don't have to worry about it getting wet. Yeah, so like if you've ever seen Hogan's Heroes, that light they use at the beginning of Hogan's Heroes as a spotlight, that's a beam projector. Again, it can be used for very bright, very brassy things in theater. They're much more popular in the 20s and 30s and 40s than they are nowadays. Again, the far sight is the light that's used to light cycloramas nowadays. Is a parasil reflector. You can find them in single units or in multiple units. Again, the one I've got you here, it is a 3 in a row. They also come in quads where you have 4 around. So they're despite the picture, they are big and bulky. Both the scoop and all these lights are large lights because they're meant to pump lots of light into the environment. But again, they're just a source and a reflector, and so they don't need the lens to focus. These lights are about spreading light. Yes, and as much as they can. Cool. All right, I want to begin. This is not the be-all, end-all lecture on how to design the lights for your show. Again, projects 1 through 5 are based upon the lectures that I've given you. Projects 6, 7, and 8 will all be about Death of a Salesman. Okay? I've given you a copy of the script. At one point, we're going to go through and analyze the script. If you've already gone through and read it, that's great. If you haven't, you're not behind. But you should start thinking about looking at Death of a Salesman and we're going to start analyzing the script and looking for things that we as a lighting designer can do to help tell the story. Yes? Now, I'm going to just say this to get it into your system. Just let it wash over you. This will not be the only time I say this little part of the lecture, but it may be the first time you've heard this part of the lecture. So let's just start at the beginning. As a lighting designer, what is your job? The first part we talked about is to provide visibility. You want to see the actors on the stage. Now, if you're working in a community theater that has 20 lights and 12 dimmers, that may be all you can do, is light the actors on the stage. And I will guarantee you, if you are a lighting designer who lights the actors on the stage, 99% of people are going to say, wow, things look great. Because I came to the show and I saw the actors. Yes? So visibility is your number one responsibility. Now, I'm going to teach a method in this class that was developed by a man named Richard McCandless back in the 20s and 30s. It is a very effective way of lighting the stage. There have been many people who have come up with other different ways of doing lighting the stage, but I'm going to tell you, on some level, everybody refers to or comes back to elements of McCandless. What McCandless did was he looked at the paintings of Leonardo da Vinci. I've got a couple of examples here. He tended to notice the dimension, the depth that Da Vinci was able to give the paintings. Here was this flat surface that looked like these women, in this instance, had rounded faces, that the nose protruded from the environment, that had depth to them, that looked like the background was different from the subject on the canvas. And so he started analyzing how Da Vinci was able to trick the eye. Again, perspective is part of it. Having scale and proper scale perspective was part of it. But part of it was the way he used his light by having a warm key light and a cooler light that filled in below the shadows, like for instance under the noses, around the cheeks. Where there was shadow from the key light, it didn't go black. Underneath the chin, it went gray or blue. And so McCandless developed this system where he hung 2 front lights, one a warm light, one a cool light. And by warm, I mean yellows, pinks. By cool, I mean blues, lavenders. Yes? Again, some people may have difficulty seeing. Now, in some environments, you can't have 2 blues. There are things that are just warmer blues and cooler blues. Can you have 2 yellows? Yes, there are some warm yellows and there's some cool yellows. But typically, you want to have a more variety in your warm and cool. Yes, and the thing about it is, if you match the colors with their color charts, you can achieve white by blending the 2 colors together. Yes, and so that's the way McCandless began his analysis of Da Vinci. Yes. The second thing he noticed is that he would put halos on them. He would put lights from behind and from the sides that would touch their hair or touch their shoulders and make them stand out from the background. So in order to achieve this, McCandless said, you know what, not only do we need 2 front lights that are warm and cool, we should also add 2 side lights, a down light and a back light, in order to enable us to take the subject and pull them away from the environment, so that not everything is washed and flat. And so that's the McCandless system. The first thing you do is you divide the stage in what he calls areas. Again, the little diagram I've given you here is 6 areas. Let's talk about this. Again, this is not the only time we're going to mention this. This is just an introduction, let it flow over you. There's a thing called the Magic 9. If you have a box set, in other words, a box set is 3 walls where you're taking the 4th wall off. Usually, most stages around 30, 35 feet across. If you have a box set and use 5 areas across the front and 4 areas behind it, that's called the Magic 9, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, yes? And those 9 areas you can then light up from the front and sides and backs. Again, sometimes, for instance, a side light, if you've got a wall right here and it's impossible to get a side light from this side, you may not be able to get all 6 lights into every single area, but your attempt is to light each area with all 6 of those lighting instruments. And again, if you think about it, a 45-degree angle is a 90-degree angle cut in half. So if you just take the 90-degree angle and put it down on the A, B, C, or D, you just go back to where you hit a beam, or hit a catwalk, or hit something to hang a light from. Yes, that's the easy way to split 45s. Again, the side lights are 180 degrees. Anything that is in the 10-foot circle, again, most areas are 10-foot circles. Can you have a 12-foot circle? Sure, it's less efficient. Can you have a 4-foot circle? Sure, but it's too efficient. Yeah, so 10 foot is a nice size area where the actor can move around. You don't have to add an area every time they take 3 steps. But that is visibility lights using the McCandless method. We'll talk much more about it, especially once we get into programming and actually designing the plot. But just know as an introduction that each area that you're going to come up with, 6 or 9 or 4 or 5, however many areas you come up with to divide the stage into, every 10-foot circle of light is going to have 360 degrees of coverage. Yes? So that's the visibility. All that is visibility. That's the first layer of your lighting design. The second layer are what are called washes. The washes are going to basically give you the mood of the text. Again, I've given you a couple examples here. One of them is very dark, using blues and greens. Also some gobos on the background to give you a mood. You can see another one where there's heavy backlight, people in silhouette with some gobos on the ground. You can see there's another more rock concert-y thing. Each one has a different color to it. Each one has a different feeling about it. Even when we get to the specials, the next pictures down, you can see that there's a warm sense with the moon in the background. The reason I put that picture in the specials is because you can see that there's a light that is lighting just the 2 actors standing in the silhouette there, to keep them out of silhouette and to actually give them shape with their light. That would be a special. That's the third layer. So your washes and your moods, which can be things like fog, it can be things like snow, stars, other things to give you to establish a mood or an environment. Cloud gobos, anything that establishes time of day, anything that establishes where you are as far as you may have a fire effect. In other words, if the city is burning and you're outside the city, you may have a fire effect that establishes a mood. Yes, you may be on the lake, and so you see, like in Seagull, they're on the lake and they're constantly talking about the lake. So you may have a little glow of the moonlight off the lake, being little flicks of light that hit the actors. Yes, those are all mood lighting. Yes. Now, specials are any light that you hang for a specific purpose. And again, a lot of times they're just there for an actor to give a speech in. Yeah, so they depend on the locale. You'll typically having a special down right, down left, and down center will get you the important places where an actor will stand to give a very important speech. But then also adding specials, like if you have a specific thing on the back wall that wants to light up, you have a sign For instance, let's say we're doing Scrooge and you want to light up Scrooge's sign or Marley's face on the doorknob or whatever, that's a special. All it does is light up that doorknob. Yes? So those are all specials. Now again, you can see in the last example I've given you, that looks like it's from Streetcar Named Desire. You've got Blanche in the background getting all dressed up, and she's got a light that is not from anything, it's just a light that's on her. Yes, and so sometimes that can add, a special light can add to the flavor of the look. Yes, you can also see there's a neon sign out there. There may not be anything in the script that says that, but it's a special light that adds to the mood of what's going on. So again, for instance, not that you have to have read Death of a Salesman, but at one point they go to a seedy motel with his lover. It may be that you have a pulsating vacancy sign or no vacancy sign that could add to the flavor of it. Now again, if it's something the set designer can add, great. You can, again, that's where you collaborate. What if we did this, maybe it flew in, maybe it flies out, or maybe it could just be a go-go. Or maybe it could just be the red flare on their face, and you get the audience to understand that it's a vacancy or non-vacancy sign, yes? So again, those would be examples of specials. Practicals, things that work on stage, like lamps, like chandeliers. Again, there's a picture here of an operating light that's on, radios, refrigerators, anything that in reality would use electricity and light up, computer screens, television screens, anything that would, in the sense of the reality of the play, make sense, those are practicals. Now, if you're practical, for instance, in the case of the operating light, if the practical can give you the sense or the mood of the piece, again, you see a little smoke there. So you've got the light from the practical and the light, or the diffusion from the smoke. There may be a little bit of fill because it's not a complete silhouette on that. Just like the video where the guy had the candle, it had a little light glow in the front, so you didn't have a total loss of the actor. It may be that you can get away with your practical being part of your specials. Or it may be that your area light can do something that your special needs to do. In which case you don't have to hang a separate light. If you can find one of your lights that's doing something else to do a second thing, great. But again, you need to thought through your plot to know what you're hoping to do and whether you need to hang another instrument to do it or whether you can adapt an existing light to do that. I would always make notes of what your plans are. Put little notepads next to your scripts at all times and just put a little note in saying, refrigerator light or down light or whatever it is that your thought is. Put it in the script with an arrow to a specific place, and then as you, again, once you've written it down, the thought is in the script, you'll come back and you'll remind yourself of what your hope is to do with the plot. Yes? Now, we're not talking about anything yet about how to create a plot. All this is just thinking about it as you're reading it, coming up with the design in your head, so that then you can decide which instruments to use to actually fulfill the dreams that are in your head. Your little movie that we talked about the second or third day of class. Cool? Cool. Again, we'll talk much more about the design steps and the processes and all that sort of stuff as we go along. I just want to give you a little introduction so that you wouldn't come out of left field when you first started it. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you later.
Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio, a fellow of infinite jest.
The lighting designer is using an assortment of lights to frame the stage for the audience to kind of know what's going on in the show. Giving the audience a sense of where they are. Is it daytime, nighttime? Is it weather? Are we in a foggy pond?
We tell the audience where to look. We give them a sense of mood, of atmosphere, of time of day. We help establish an emotional undercurrent, and we're also storytellers. It's really trying to dig deep into the heart of what the characters are doing. It's trying to dig deep into what the story that's being told is. So Matt, he's just washed up on shore. Let's do the background. We'll start with the idea that it's the sky. Could one best boy light the psych?
Yeah. Absolutely, good idea.
I must say the actor is the most important thing on the stage.
Let's warm up the diagonal a little bit. A little amber in there.
Very often as lighting designers, we want to kind of rim the actor and kind of pop them out from the set so that we have a foreground and a background, because the actor is the one that's telling the story. And then we're helping to tell that story.
Let's play with the sky a little bit. I want to do that. What else do we have up here? We could throw a little bit of texture, like a kind of a cloudy thing. Anything you could do with that?
We've got the other best boy
Yeah,
up there.
got some templates in it.
Let's take a look.
Yeah.
What's great about that, Howell, is that it feels like reflected light hitting Sebastian. I think that's beautiful.
Exactly.
Actually, it's so beautiful. I wonder if we could get more of that. I see myself as a dual-fold lighting designer, half sculptor, half painter. I might be in ancient days going doot, 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 and I just cut away a little of the blue, and then you see how the costume looks, and it looks a little flat, so you take out one light and then put on another one, and all of a sudden the costume and the character becomes three-dimensional. And then behind them, there might be a background, and that is when I take out my paintbrush and put a little blue behind them. You know what I'd love to see, Howell and Matt, is it going from daytime to nighttime in 20 counts?
Sure. So restore this as Q104, I guess.
Okay.
And then why don't you go back to Q100? Yeah, you got a 20 count on the next Q. Sculpting with light is really a major part of our job. Get a little more blue in there, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Especially the body. You know, the body needs to be sculpted from the side, you know, from the back. I want the audience to feel like they could hear the story being told. I pride myself in being able to light the story well, being able to really have the audience focus on where the action's taking place, and to be able to follow that thoroughly. Are you ready, sir? So we're going to go to dark here.
And Max, stand up.
Lights, go.
This is the air. That is the glorious moon. This pearl she gave me, I do feel it and see it.
Going into designing the show is, I kind of use this word called formatting. And it's a process of hours and days and weeks with the director, set designer, costume designer, kind of formatting our way through the production. We'll have a rough set model, and we'll kind of start on page one of the script and kind of work our way through it, you know, one scene at a time. And where's this scene going to be, and what scenery is going to be in it, what part of the stage it's going to be on, and how we transition from getting out of this scene into the fields of hay and things like that.
Could you lie down one more time, because we're going to need to, and then where you comfortably are able to get up and stand. Once I'm hired, I read the script, and I read the script without thinking about the light the first time through, so that I can just get a sense of what the script means to me. And then I read it again, and I mark it up with thoughts about the lighting. But sometimes those thoughts are very simple thoughts, like what time of day is it, where does it take place? And the next step is very often meeting with the director and talking about the director's feelings about the piece. Because I do believe strongly that my job is really to help the director with the director's vision.
The director is very specific about what he's going to want in this certain scene, you know, whether the scene's in a kitchen or in a basement or how he feels about how it should be lit, whether it's just a little light coming through the window and, it's a very dark and gloomy scene with just one lamp over the table. That's a chemistry to me. That kind of tells me as a designer how to layer into his vision of the scene.
Good. Thank you. Good job.
One of the biggest challenges is making sure that we're able to get lights where we want them, because if we don't, we really can't make the show look good. Another challenge is that everybody else who's working on the project, the set designer, the costume designer, the choreographer, they all have done their work beforehand. So the choreographer has done the work in the rehearsal hall, the director's done the work in the rehearsal hall. When we walk into the theater, we are the only ones who sit down with a completely blank white piece of paper, a completely empty, nothing is done yet.
All the lighting equipment, the cabling, the dimmers, all the headsets. I mean, it's really down to the ironing boards. There's, everything has to go in for a production. We established a shop order, which is sent out to vendors to get a bid back, and sometimes we have to change equipment that we kind of wanted, or we have to substitute this or that. But then after that's all approved by the general managers, we start finalization of all the paperwork that's necessary for the show to go into a lighting shop. That's where the electricians take our paperwork and they get all the equipment that's on the plot and they mount it. The entire package is rented.
This is huge.
That would be Jules and Peggy's world's largest mirror ball.
All right.
We've since taken the lighting design specifications in shop order. Now we take it from paper, turn it into life, where we give them all their gear, we lay it out, we prep it, they mark it, location, dimmer, and then they put it in the box, and then they'll put it on the truck and load it into the theater floors. And what we have, that no one else in the world, which we own the patent for, is how we prep our moving lights to take out human error. We'll show you how we do that. How many things are stored in here about?
More than I can say.
Millions. Pull it for me, it'll bring it down.
Color chips?
Color chips.
All right, let's see. That is...
Just finding it. Just found this.
Wow.
It's gonna go downstairs.
That is incredible.
Color chip.
Our color chips. If you want, you can hold it up to the light and see.
The Queen. Millions of choices.
That is incredible.
Is that incredible?
No.
Wow. Fascinating.
First of all, we go to PRG to look at new equipment, but if there are things that we want to do in a show that never been done before, a demo room is an amazing place to do that.
Can you speed up and slow down the rain?
Yes.
So how about that driving rain that you have, but maybe slower?
I had just been there 2 weeks before working on a ballet where we needed to see if different kinds of material, how they took light, because we were going to project some snow on 3 different surfaces. We wanted to make sure that you could see through one surface to the next surface to the next surface. So if you didn't go to the demo room and then you had all the scenery built for thousands and thousands of dollars and then found out that you actually couldn't see through each level, then you're screwed. It saves the producers a lot of money and it saves us the anxiety because we know that it's going to work. Costumes deeply affect the lighting design of the show because what I have to make sure is that I make the costumes look the color that the costume designer wants them to look. Sometimes I'll even take the fabric back with me and pick different colors based on the color of the fabric or how the fabric takes light, just so that I know that I can give the purity of what the costume looks like in terms of color and feel.
You know, we're always experimenting, we're exploring new layers, new elements, new types of light, new types of sound. So there is a great collaboration between all departments throughout the course of putting a show together.
I don't think that lighting has to be more spectacular on Broadway. I think the most important thing really is the show and the storytelling. But I guess, okay, I'll admit it, yes, we push it a little bit and try to make it a little more spectacular.
You know how we're learning about things I'm Act 2? I'm like learning about things right now.
Oh, you mean right this second?
Right this second,
You mean about what that drop looks like? The
Yeah.
consistency of it? The blue and the blue?
Yeah.
What else
Oh,
are
here
you
we
learning,
go.
Casey?
Well, I was just learning that I didn't know what that was, but just the color of that yellow was so pretty on it.
Oh, we should go to one of the yellow cubes.
We can't forget that Aladdin is a fairy tale, and there's a lot of color in the scenery, and there is a lot of color in the lighting. It was all about sort of heightening reality into a kind of fantasy world. So the hope was to really make the audience feel like they were living in a fantasy. There is something about the adrenaline of working on Broadway because money is so tight. Then you have to work quickly and fast and hard, and it's almost like working out. It's almost like playing a sport.
Let's see what you think of this.
Yeah. There's romance right there.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
So you feel like that's romantic?
Absolutely.
That's really what I was hoping, that you would find that it would be
Absolutely.
romantic. So
It's
you do feel
gorgeous.
that way.
So you're going from the energy and the hot feeling of this wildly crazy, energetic number to just this beautiful romance, and it's perfect.
Yeah,
I love
and
it.
it's also, I wanted to feel a little bit like her too, because he's
It does.
great. Okay.
He's the orange, and she's the pink.
There you go. Okay, good. I'm
Yeah.
glad.
No, it's great, and it's
Very often, we're responding so much to what the other people are doing that I forget myself sometimes. Because there's so many people that are in the room that you want to make sure that, as a lighting designer, that they're all being taken care of. That the set looks good, the costumes look good, the dance looks good, but sometimes we just have to let ourselves go and go with our heart and gut and emotion. I'd love to look at the buildings lit up.
Okay, sure.
And then
We can do that.
if you do that, that'd be great.
Can you bring up the ground roll lights, please?
I think of myself as a chameleon in many ways. I do believe that my job is to respond to the rest of the collaborative team. So I think as the years have gone on, there might be something that I do that makes me Natasha Katz. I don't know what those words would be, and I don't even know how to look back and think about what my style is, because I believe my style is the style of a chameleon and working with other people.
And go to Q Next. Oh, but that's kind of pretty. And go to Q Next.
I was not born with the dream of wanting to be a lighting designer. I was born with the dream of wanting to work in the theater. I was definitely born with the dream of wanting to work on Broadway, and I was definitely born with the dream of wanting to work on musicals and plays. So when I went to Oberlin College, I worked in all sorts of backstage in the theater, and then I got a full semester's credit to work with somebody in New York City. So I worked with a lighting designer because I just started to do a little bit of lighting in college, and it started to appeal to me. And I worked on a show called I Remember Mama at the Majestic Theater right across the street from here. And the minute I walked into the theater and walked through the stage door, I was hooked.
Go. And go to Q Next.
It was really on-the-job training for me.
Go to Q Next. Go to Q Next.
I had met so many people working on the show that a lot of people asked me to work with them. So I just continued to work and work and work. I was 25 years old.
I grew up in North Carolina, and at a young age, I began working at the Roadhouse, where all the road shows would come in. And I took a big interest in just watching how all the lighting packages came off the trucks and were set up in the theater. And just as a young kid, I was like 10, 11 years old, and this was very fascinating to me how this lighting package could just come off a truck and get set up, and then the performers would come in that afternoon and a show that night. And then we took it all down, packed it on the truck, and they left, and we were back to bare theaters. I've been told that people say that Howell Binkley has a signature in his lighting. The more I'm thinking about it, I think I do kind of light things that have a Binkley signature to it. I kind of use a high side angle that I find myself using in a lot of shows, and it's a sculpting technique which works very well for me.
You see how this changes colors too? Go.
Hamilton A-B, check 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hamilton A-B, check 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, check 1, 2, 3.
It's a simple set, you know, and here we have a whole entire show done on this one set. It's not like a lot of drops flying in and out, you know, it's just one area. And my job in this show is really to dissect this whole show, to really frame it in a way that there's many locations throughout the course of the 50 songs that are in the show. Each song kind of has a new location, a new time of day, a different feel, whether it's this song is a memory song from the actor to convey to the audience what's going on during the lyrics of the song. In our transfer from off-Broadway up to Broadway for Hamilton, the major change that I had to do was that off-Broadway, the ceiling from the stage floor to the grid was only like 16 feet. And moving to Broadway, we had 28 feet. And so that meant that I had to change lighting fixtures. We had to incorporate some fixtures into the move that weren't really a theatrical lighting fixture. They were more kind of a rock and roll light that I knew that would kind of like the only source that was going to work for the show. I think the success of the show is just from how different the show actually is. It's a historical show, and it's really you know, depicting our history. And I just think the technique of the show is quite different, and it's just generating a new type of theater. It's introducing that to the audiences.
You keep going through some temples.
The technology has changed lighting over the last 20 years incredibly. A lot of the old conventional units were a fixed unit. It would just, you hung it and it focused, and it really had one job. You know, it would take, you know, 100 fixed lights to do what one automated lighting fixture can do now.
A huge change was moving lights, where you don't have to get up on a ladder to focus the light. We call them moving light programmers, and we say to them, I'd like a blue light on that piece of scenery, and it's done remotely through a computer. In the old days, when I started, you had to roll a ladder out, you had to go to the light, you had to move the light, you had to put a gel in the light. If you wanted a new color, you had to get the ladder out, roll it out, go back up the ladder, change the color of the light, which would take time in the middle of rehearsal and time in the morning. And now we don't have to do that anymore because we have these lights that are remote controlled. That's an enormous change in our business.
I'm going to just bring it where we were to the front house. So let's just go back where we were on stage.
The short version of the history of lighting design is that the greatest lighting designer, I guess, is nature, Mother Nature, or whoever you want to call it, because it was all done in the outside by sunlight, and then it was all done by firelight. And then as we started to move indoors after Shakespeare's time, then we were able to start to control the light. On Broadway, when it started, there was no credit for a lighting designer. The set designer did it with the electrician. As the years went on, it became its own profession. And for many years, actually, it was a profession that was really sort of dominated by women. there was somebody called Jean Rosenthal who really changed lighting in the sense that she figured out a way to do paperwork so that lighting could be repeated over and over again, because how do you record lighting? So Jean Rosenthal is sort of the grandmother of us all.
I don't want the audiences to feel like it's just a light show. It's a juggling act to balance between the knowledge of the mechanics and the creativity as well.
Art has to drive the technical. We have to use all this technology as tools for what our vision is.
Stand inside of that light and make it feel like the rain is pouring against you. Yeah, and I like what you did when you did,
Okay, cool.
So the rain is torrentially pouring against you.
Okay.
And when it flashes, you're worried that you better get inside.
Okay.
Or you could die.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and go for it. Start running. And hit it.
Oh, now move forward and go stage right a little bit. You're going against the wind. It pushes you back stage left. Oh my God. But your daughter is waiting for you, but the wind pushes you back away from her. So far back stage left, you're never going to see her again. You're never going to see her. Now go get her, get her, get her stage right. Go, go, go.